Welcome back to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Time now to go to Boulder, Colorado to talk with Michael Krieger of LibertyBlitzkrieg.com. Michael may be evacuated at any moment as a giant forest fire threatens to engulf his area of the city. Michael Krieger, welcome to the Keiser Report.
Thank you so much for having me, Max. And yes, it's true. I am under pre-evacuation notice, so all my important stuff is packed up and I'm ready to roll at any minute.
Fantastic. All right. Michael Krieger, Barclays Bank was just fined $200 million for rigging LIBOR and Eurobor rates, a $350 trillion market. They were also asked by the CFTC to please stop doing that. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is a recurring theme, and I think there are two key things to understand and notice with regard to the story. The first is that the reason why this is so pervasive and becoming more pervasive by the day and more egregious and more aggressive as far as manipulation of markets and the key rates that everything else is priced off of is because of the fact that the American Anglo-Western imperialism empire that exists today in the world is maintained through two things. One is military force, as we know, but the other is financial markets. And therefore, the government is more than happy to work with the financial oligarchs or the banksters, whatever you want to call them, to rig the markets on purpose to maintain this aura of financial stability, financial strength, to continue to dominate essentially the rest of the world and get them to do what they want. So that's why you're seeing all this stuff. You're seeing it increase and you're seeing slap on the wrists because the governments and the regulators do not want to go after these guys because they're doing what essentially they're being told to do. So that's really it. But I think the key thing also is that if you read the CFTC press release, they're sort of trying to make it seem like they're doing a good job. 200 million. I mean, even the director of enforcement for the CFTC admits that, you know, the LIBOR rate that they were manipulating is used to price hundreds of trillions in swaps, derivatives, et cetera. So, I mean, to manipulate hundreds of trillions of dollars, you get a 200 million fine. I mean, it's just a joke.
Yeah, let's talk for a moment about the term moral hazard. This is understood to mean that if you don't properly regulate these folks, if there's no deterrent for committing this type of criminality, then you risk becoming the norm in these markets. And the reason I bring this up is because over the past few years, we've heard Ron Paul and others in America go after the Fed and talk about how the Fed's manipulation of interest rates is causing economic harm in America and by extension to the rest of the world. Now, the moral hazard here is that the Fed's model of manipulating interest rates and causing wide-scale economic distress has gone global. So now you see the LIBOR folks in London are doing the same thing Bernanke does. People in Europe, people in South America, people around the world have picked up on this idea that if you manipulate rates, you engage in rent-seeking, you larcenistically siphon off cash with no cost and no risk, it's okay. And it's gone global now. The Mafia Fed model of Ben Bernanke has gone global. Does America get any benefit out of this?
No, I mean, as you can see, if you look at any statistics, whether it's real income, which has not gone up for decades in the United States, the middle class disappearing basically before our very eyes in the United States. The argument from the establishment would be that we're benefiting because we're maintaining our status in the world, but the facts on the ground don't justify and live up to that propaganda, because what you really see is this is the tiny, it's not even 1%, it's 0.001%, the financial oligarchs, the CEOs of multinational corporations, and the politicians in Washington, D.C. It's a very small group of people. It benefits them because it keeps them in power, while it hollows out the American economy, destroys the middle class, makes people not want to invest or do anything, right? Why would you want to create a business? Why would you want to invest capital? Why would you want to do anything if you know that your government's criminal? The answer is you wouldn't, and that's why we're not seeing that happen.
All right, Michael Krieger, let's talk about another SEC investigation. They're looking into wash trades, high-frequency trading, and high-frequency wash trades. Now, I worked on Wall Street myself for many years, as you have, and we know that a wash trade is basically trading with yourself to manipulate prices up or down. And now suddenly Bloomberg has a story saying, yeah, you know what? Wash trade is systemic. It's endemic. It's 85% of the trades on the New York Stock Exchange are computer-driven algorithmic trading, and most of those are wash trades, quote stuffing, high-frequency trading, purely for the benefit of that 1/10 of 1% you're talking about, and to the detriment of these markets, right? These markets are suffering as a result of all this fraudulent behavior, yes?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I still, despite the fact that I bash a lot of Wall Street all the time, I'm still very connected into that world with people, whether it's on the, the buy side or the sell side. A lot of friends and a lot of contacts still there. I had this conversation before I got online with you with somebody who works at a brokerage, and he's just saying, he's lamenting the fact of how the markets are rigged, how it's manipulated, how no one believes in it, how everyone's just sitting there, saying this is a waste of time, but what can we do? And that's really the truth. And so yes, the markets are being destroyed, and the economy and the real economy is being destroyed. So we're essentially seeing the destruction of the entire what was left of the free market system and the markets themselves because of the computers dominating, because of the lack of the SEC and the CFTC or any of these regulatory bodies to do anything, and the fact that the truth of the matter, it's becoming clear to everybody, is that the government and the financial oligarchs are working hand in hand. That's why none of them ever go to jail. They have guns to each other's heads. They probably have blackmail on each other to, that would embarrass the hell out of them. So, they're working together, and that's what we have here. And so there's nothing for us to do at this point except for try to live our lives, try to do the right thing, and then just wait for this thing to blow up, which it will do.
Right. Now, to cover up all this fraud, the central banks are engaged in financial repression. They're repressing populations around the world. The European Central Bank is now considering negative interest rate policy, or NIRP, to replace what we have come to know as ZIRP, the zero interest rate policies. And of course, this is not only penalizing savers, the people who are the backbone of the capitalist system, but it goes beyond just penalizing these people. It's aggressively, almost you could say financially torturing them with negative interest rates. In other words, you have to pay the bank to hold on to your money. How do they get away with this, Michael Krieger?
Well, I mean, it's interesting you bring up this point in general, because it's not just the savers that are getting destroyed, which of course they are, and they're being forced into other assets, precious metals, commodities, equities in some cases. But on the other side of the equation, what about the people that have no money? Have you looked at credit card rates recently, right? They're not 0%. They're double digits, high double digit percentage. So the poor that are trying to borrow in that capacity have very high interest rates. Now, if we're talking about an item that the government wants you to buy, like a new car or a new home, then you could pretty much get pretty low rates. But again, the key is low interest rates aren't really available to people that want to go out there and start a speculative or be an entrepreneur, a business like that. The low interest rates are available with leverage to the financial oligarchs to engage in rent seeking and leverage speculation.
Right. Let's take a country like Greece for a second. If I'm a Wall Street bank, a Goldman or a J.P. Morgan, I have virtually unlimited access to virtually 0% interest to do a leverage buyout of that country, to load that country up with a debt, wait till it goes bankrupt, and then I've got the assets to sell to pay back the loan that I made, and I keep the difference. But if I'm an entrepreneur in Greece, I have no access to credit. And no access, certainly, to cheap credit. So, and our regulators and our politicians are telling us that there's somehow a problem, like the Greeks aren't paying taxes or the Greeks are lazy. They never point out to the fact that the oligarchs have access to this 0% interest rate in which to maraud and pillage Greece, but the people, locals, don't have any access to any rate of any credit.
Exactly. And that's why you're seeing globally, as you mentioned, this is a global phenomenon now, and you're seeing the big companies get bigger. And as you know, the percentage of assets that the top 5 banks in the United States have today, as in relation to GDP, is much higher than it was pre-financial crisis. So, not only are we not dealing with what caused it in the first place, but we're actually doubling down on the prior policies, and we're allowing the people that perpetrated it all to become bigger and more powerful, more dominant, and more in control of the political economy in the United States. And again, clearly this is a game plan, and they're not going to give up on their own. And it just needs to fall apart, essentially, like the Soviet Union did, which I fully expect it to.
Now, Matt Taibbi recently penned a piece for Rolling Stone magazine about the decades-long rigging of the municipal financial market by a handful of big banks, including J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't read his article, but of course we know about Jefferson County in Alabama and how they went in there, what they did. We know what Goldman Sachs went in and did with Greece. Again, it goes back to the same strategy playbook that we discussed earlier, which is you go into a community, and I mean, this game is as old as humanity itself, really, or as old as civilization or money systems are. You go in, you load your enemy up with debt, and then you strangle them, and then you make them do what you want. Or you just buy their assets on the cheap. I mean, that's what's going on. And, you know, I was writing about this a few years ago, talking about how the U.S. debt is illegitimate, right? This debt was forced upon us to bail out the banks, which caused the crisis in the first place. So at some point, humanity, and whether it's Greece or here or Ireland or whatever, needs to step up to the plate and say, no, I did not voluntarily accept this debt. We need to write this stuff off, period.
Now, the popular dissent in the U.S. is pretty non-existent against this type of loan sharking, predatory finance, and financial terrorism in America. And what kind of pressure do you think might evolve at some point? Or is the population, like any community that's being terrorized by the mafia with loan sharking, they're simply too afraid to say anything?
I don't think it's fear at all, actually. I think it's complete Disneyland mentality. I think that what the Fed and the U.S. government have been very, very good at doing ever since Occupy Wall Street, right? It's no coincidence, as we've discussed, that when that movement started, that was sort of when gold was peaking, markets were crashing. Ever since that came onto the scene, they've been very good at sort of making things look better, right? So gold is down, markets are up. The people have been lulled into a sense of passivity again, thinking that, you know, I know something's wrong, but hey, you know, the markets aren't saying anything. So my view is that it's going to take considerable more pain on the streets, to the middle class, to maybe a recession will do it, to wake up the next group. My guess would be close to the election, as we see a recession, we will have chaos again in the markets, and that will cause people to wake up.
All right, Michael Krieger, we're out of time. Thanks so much for being on the Keiser Report.
Thanks, Max. Always fun.
All right, and that's going to do it for this edition of the Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacey Herbert. I want to thank my guest, Michael Krieger. If you want to send me an email, please do so at keiserreport@rttv.ru. Until next time, Max Keiser saying bye, y'all.